And we're live. There we go. I'm JSaye. Over there we've got Edgar Papke, and this is Innovation Hour with Edgar and JSaye. Where what do we do, Edgar, in this podcast?
Well, we strike up conversations about what's possible through design and innovation. And in our weekly conversations, we delve into what's current and look at different aspects of design and innovation, of how it happens in business and in a broader context of our world. We tap a little bit into what's going on in the world around us right now, in the context that we're in, and apply different ways of thinking about design and solving problems and innovation through that lens. And the intention here is to invite people into a conversation that will be useful and create benefit for them, and will help make their lives better in all different ways of what's possible.
All right. I love it. Well, we have mentioned some topics that we want to go through today. Do you just want to roll through it and see where we go?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good start. What I'd really like to start with is what's happening in the world around us, and the incredible energy for creativity that's abounding around us. Now, that's not to say that all the creativity is offering us things and new things in our lives that we see as being valuable. And of course, just like in any course of innovation and creativity, there's going to be failures, and people are going to take risks, and it's not going to play out the way that they intended to. But nevertheless, to say that when we get a heightened awareness of our energies, of our emotions, then the outcome of that and what it spurs is high levels of creativity, that the human expression of emotion, and the different outlets that we use for it. And the creativity around us is abounding right now. And in some instances, it's having a direct impact on businesses and organizations that would typically find themselves in far worse situations than they're currently in. And
Mm-hmm.
in other ways, it's personal creativity, yeah, that's helping us to move through and to manage better all the different emotions and consequences of the pandemic and the context that we're in. So that's where I begin with, is just that simple idea of the incredible level of creativity that's coming out of an awareness of our situation and how we're feeling about it, and a tremendous amount of energy that's coming from that, both individually and collectively.
Yeah, and you mentioned awareness there. It is something that I did want to touch on was um, emotional intelligence during the pandemic, not from a consumer and a business perspective, but actually internally. How do you lead through a pandemic? How do you understand your employees? Where would you start with that? As I mean, you work with a lot of leaders, so
Yeah.
how do you bridge that gap of understanding?
Yeah. I think the first thing that I always start with is to explore what people are feeling. This is that first step in design thinking. Once you understand what your intention is uh, towards one another and the relationship, that lends itself an awareness of what's my intention to the relationship, creates an awareness of how I listen and how I empathize. And I think what's coming to the forefront right now, and for a lot of leaders, is that ability to listen and to see it as this priceless gift, and in a way, a key skill of being a successful leader is to listen. And more than other time, at least in my experience of the last 30 plus years of working as a leadership psychologist, is this idea of the power of listening. And that it's a gift that we give to one another. It's also the place from which empathy, you cannot empathize until you listen well. So I think one of the things in bridging and under helping leaders to understand where they're at is to be able to listen to others, and to be able to be curious and explore with empathy, to understand the experiences that other people are going through. I mean, this is key. Those experiences include, incredible levels of fear, anxiety, stress that we're undergoing in the moment, and high levels of concern. And I think unless we're empathizing to that, unless we're listening well, and being curious about other people's experiences, we're missing. And we're missing. And I suggest that to leaders over and over, that being conscious and aware of yourself and how you're listening and your own behaviors and the choices you're making is key right now. And there's another aspect of this listening as well that goes with awareness, is as we listen to others, we also have to be listening to ourselves. So be aware of our own thoughts and our own takes on what we're hearing, and come to a place of recognizing that and not letting that get in the way of listening to the experience of others and what they want to share with us. So not only do we, I think in order to listen well to others, we have to be conscious and aware and listen to our own thoughts as well. And from that, we can make the choices and the powerful choices of how we interact with and listen to others.
Yeah, and to hammer in on something that's, I actually went through a workshop last week or Monday. The days kind of fused together with Daniel Stillman, who kind of teaches about how to have good conversation. But I got 3 tips that actually helped me with my active listening over Zoom, because I feel like maybe my personality changes some via Zoom. I'm obviously expressive and I move around a lot. Zoom contains me, and I want to not step on anyone's toes. And I get very distracted looking at myself, at my own screen. So the tips that were taught in that class that I really enjoyed was that you can actually hide your own screen so you don't look at yourself and don't see yourself. The other thing is, when I look directly at the camera, it feels more like I'm looking directly at the other person from the other person's perspective. So you get that engagement. So when I am listening, I do try really hard to look at the camera and flash down to the person so that I can know their level, and then just based on their voice, really, really focus in on what they're saying. And those tips were huge, and I'm still working on them, but have been huge in how I feel connected to other people that I'm speaking with. Because most of the time, say you are a leader, you get used to bumping elbows with people because you're in an office space, so you can get a gauge on everyone a lot better. But over Zoom, like I mentioned, I normally in meetings I'm talkative and participatory, but over Zoom I am quieter, and I noticed that shift. So I try and manage that. But those little tips really did help me. So looking directly into the camera when I'm listening, or trying to share something important like I am right now, and hiding myself so I don't look at my face the whole time.
Yeah, those are, it's interesting too, because the simplicity of it is that when you're looking at yourself and you see yourself being broadcast, it adds a layer of just immediate feedback. And
Yeah.
it's a, there's some great fallacies in life. And I speak to these quite often in talks and workshops. So there's some great fallacies. So the first question with tongue in cheek is, what's the greatest fallacy that's spoken worldwide? Which is that the sun rises, and it doesn't, the earth turns, and we all know it. And so we speak the fallacy. The second great fallacy is, don't take this personal. And while we like to think that we can take things and make them impersonal, including like, let's just focus on the problem. The project is screwed up, let alone that you're the one that screwed it up. Anyway, we take everything. Everything is about us. We are, as a matter of fact, at the end of the day, and how we see the world and how we experience the world. In that lens, we're at the center of our world looking out. And it's really interesting that most of our behavior and our self-concept of how we see ourselves physically, spiritually, socially, emotionally, how we actually perceive ourselves is a matter of the constant feed of feedback that we get from the world around us. Hence, everything is personal. It is reflective. And so I think what you're getting at here is key, because on one end, what we're doing is we're missing the energy that comes with the social interactions of being in each other's presence.
Yeah.
All the cues, the nonverbal cues, the energy, even tone gets shifted you're more conscious of it when you're in this median as opposed to being face to face. And so there's a shift in that direction. And at the same time, there's a shift in the other direction that says, okay, I'm going to have an increased level of consciousness and awareness right now, because a lot of feedbacks, a lot of it is in the moment. It's instant.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to do is look at myself on the screen, and there it is. It's live. It's real. And so an awareness of how I'm responding to that and reacting to it is what you're talking about. And I think that's a really good, I'm going to suggest to you that that's a good thing. It is. I'm always a firm believer that the more conscious we can become of our behavior, the more conscious we become on our impact and influence on others. And through that consciousness, increased awareness, there's the awareness piece, we get to utilize and bring to the forefront the most powerful thing that we have, and that's our choice of behavior. Through our thought and our consciousness of thought and how we manage our thought and our feelings and emotions, the more aware we are, the more we're able to utilize that and use it in a really powerful way to choose what we do and say in any given moment. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, it's just a time when, example, yesterday I had, I'm sure this isn't many for some people, but I had eight Zoom calls in one day, and I was obviously exhausted. One, that's way too many. We're in person, but two, it's like I'm constantly watching multiple movies at the same time and having to really engage to read what people are trying to tell me, make sure I'm not just saying something silly or offending someone on accident, because I just don't know where the walls are anymore. And that change has made it to where I try and set expectations up front. And just like you see people your kids are going to walk through, your internet might go down, something might go wrong. Everybody's going through the same thing, and something about everybody going through it makes us all feel like, okay, it's cool then. I wonder if we can keep that level of transparency moving forward. It's like this transparency where, yeah, things will go wrong, even if it's just this comfort with things going wrong with the technology we're using to communicate, or in projects when things go wrong. Are we still going to interact the same way and treat each other as well as we have been?
It's a really good question, because we have this capability. Resilience is one thing, going back to the way things were and acting in a way that we acted before, even though it's not, to the best interest of the relationship or to ourselves. Somehow we have this notion and this ability as human beings to go back instead of discovering what we're learning and moving forward. Learning is all about discovery and application, and then seeing outcomes. It's sometimes we learn and we only apply short term, so we never really see the benefit of the outcome long term. So I think that's a really good place to spend some time thinking about. That's a great space. I also if I may, you captured that really important ingredient of transparency and leading to vulnerability and shared vulnerability. This whole idea of vulnerability that we're really spending more and more time on and becoming more aware of in ourselves. What that is really an openness. To be vulnerable is to be intimate and to express and let you see who I really am. And at the core of our being, there's this place of wanting acceptance from others. And how do we manifest that in the behaviors in our relationships in intentional ways? So I think what you're talking about here and the level of transparency and vulnerability, also a shared vulnerability, as we talk and speak to expectations, and we speak to expectations of vulnerability that we have in our what could be happening at any time, and what could go wrong. Think how often we kind of hide from that, or we wear a mask or a persona around being so steadfast and successful, and here's a different way of coming at it. And just like in any real intimate, true relationship, a caring relationship, there's that sense of vulnerability and openness that comes with it, and it makes it attractive, because what we're doing is we're more or less confronting our fears and addressing them and letting go of them as we bring our fears into the spoken realm, which is what vulnerability is a lot about. Here's the fear that I have, concern at whatever level it is. It's remarkably powerful because it invites others. Openness invites openness, and I think that's one of the keys. You're not always going to get it. The thing is, once we start building a shared framework for that expectation, we can do a lot with that.
Well, I'm glad I uncovered that nugget from you. I just definitely, these are things that I'm feeling and observing as we go through this experience. Everyone kind of living it in their own way, but in a very, very similar way. Um, I know I've changed. And so I did some research into consumers and what they expected from companies because they changed too. And so I'm just going to drop some of those things right here from the McKinsey report. Um, Consumer, what they expect from businesses. So they already are going to see what you're doing because you're online all the time. And if you're not, you're really hard to find. So you're probably struggling right now. But what they expect is that companies do three things that I thought were really interesting. And this is like 60% of people think that companies right now should be helping with the pandemic directly, either with a product or service, donating or discounting supplies to people that are in need, whether that is people without income, healthcare providers, they want to see that, or they just want you to communicate everything about where you're getting your stuff from so that they can see transparently the supply chain so they know it's okay. And those are shifts that I think were gradually happening in some ways, that they want to see where everything's coming from. They want to see that you're giving back. But now it's the thing. It's actually where everyone's focusing. I know that'll change in the future, in the near future. But how would you respond to that if you were a business leader and you see everybody just wants me to show that I'm being helpful, or but I also need to make revenue. They're caught in this weird, if I don't do something, even if it's small and just for publicity, if I don't do something like that, then I'm not going to get attention to get business. They're like in this catch-22 situation.
It's really a great question to unpack. The first thought that I had around the way you were positioning the question is, which one is it, or what do we do with this? I think it depends upon the company, the provider of the product and service, to begin to look at themselves through that lens and see what the thread here is and what's going to be a part of the trust that people have in their brand going forward. We talked a little bit about this last week.
Yeah, we did.
So, yeah, I could go back to that because I think it is so important. And I think it's going to be a piece of this. One of the things that, and you're right, we were already heading down this path of consumers longing for and wanting greater transparency, a more caring approach. When we think about how companies and corporations care for the world and the people in it, I think we've been gravitating towards that for quite a while, which has a lot to do with trust and transparency and trust. So I think that's a key element. I think the decisions around what to pursue and what customers want. So we begin with the idea of, are you doing something directly? Right. That's the first question. And are you creating benefit through what you're doing for the pandemic? And can you innovate and do things differently than you have been doing it? And then all the way to the third one, which is about supply chain and what's the transparency in your supply chain and what do we know? And you said something really, really powerful in the way that you expressed it, and that is, or if it's just for PR's sake or for I think right now people are starting to look at advertising and marketing and everything that we're seeing coming from business is this sense that everyone's trying to figure out what's bullshit and what's not. In simple terms. And I think that organizations that look at it as just PR and marketing are not heading down the right track. I think right now you have to do something actionable and you have to be real about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how can you give? How can you donate? How can you create products and services that actually will influence in a direct way the pandemic? And then, what is your relationship to your own supply chain and transparency? What I'd like to make note of here is when we look at it, and let's look at this systemically, a little systems thinking. What's
Mm-hmm.
the underlying in all of those? The underlying in all of those is how people feel cared for. Are you willing to care for your customers? Are you willing to move from where you are today into a world of the future where you're really showing caring? Now, what's interesting about the underlying emotion and motivation of the desire for caring is acceptance. And acceptance is about, in behavior, is about openness. In other words, if I want you to accept me for who I am, I need to be open. Again, we're back to that vulnerability and intimacy piece that's so powerful. So the underlying you hear in all of this about caring, and are you really stepping out and doing something in a caring way for your customers, for society as a whole, for the world as a
Mm-hmm.
whole? And are you doing it with transparency? Does it have that form of meaning? We're not always conscious of that depth, of how significant that is. The thing is, we feel it. People feel whether they're being accepted and cared for, or they're being rejected and not cared for, or feeling even ignored through that. But think about the most intimate relationships in your life and the level of openness and the level of transparency that's required to make that relationship work. Just look at that, use that same lens to see the relationship between a business and its consumers, its customers, or society as a whole. And it verifies what you're talking about. It verifies the McKinsey study. It's,
Mm-hmm.
if you really think about it, it actually draws from the same place emotionally. This is about how we care for one another, and are you willing to step out right now and do something that actually does lend itself in a caring way to solving a problem? And the big problem is, what do we do with the coronavirus, and how do we? There's also a lot of big problems in terms of supplies, feeding people, uh, the elevation now and potential elevation of poverty and our awareness of that, and how do we care for people. These are all different elements that are now coming to bear. And I think the great companies, the ones that we will look on in a very, and I'm not just talking about long term, in the short term, are the ones that we developed a trust for because they cared. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, that's going to matter most, because it goes directly at what right now we're dealing with, and that's physical well-being and the fear around life and death. And if you're not paying attention to that, especially as a leader, you can, right now, you're either going to make or break your legacy. You're in it
Mm-hmm.
right now, regardless of the size of your business, whether you're small, medium, or large multinational. Right now, the way you behave and the choices you make are going to be not just the legacy of your brand, it's also the legacy of yourself as a leader. And again, much like looking into the screen on a Zoom, you're at the end of the day going to need to look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually took me in my mind. I guess it's completing the transition that's been going on for a while, but from company focus to community focus. So your company is actually this sense of community. Now that we have this interaction, that the basics don't do it anymore. We have to engage at a different emotional level to feel connected as we interact online. I think the way that companies are built are going to be even more interactive between employees on a personal level. I've ran a few workshops focusing on how to improve remote work. The thing that comes up time and time again is, how do we make remote work more interactive between humans? And the things that people always want to talk about are things that have nothing to do with work. They want to stop working because they're working too much, basically. It's too convenient. They want to escape work for a moment and just connect with someone else. And a lot of times they're doing that between employee and employee, levels that are so deep that they really never have done that before. And so that concept of company culture, about being a community, is going to be the fundamental piece that keeps people that are very talented, obviously, at your company, but also everything functioning. because people will get mad. People will just hide. It's so easy to hide. I could just shut my computer. I could just ignore your messages. We need a level of interaction that's unique that before wasn't demanded from us. So I think that focus on from company to community is going to be big. And that's actually, you just kind of put me there as you were talking through it.
Yeah, and that goes back to the three things that motivates us as human beings, and the work of true alignment and the work of innovation, and where the problems are that we want to solve, and how we motivate as human beings, and how does it show up? Well, it's always going to show up in three ways. One is our connectivity, our community, our inclusion, that sense of that we belong. The second one is a sense of competency and some control, or autonomy and decision making, and some control of my life with some predictability. I can be successful and be competent. And then the third one is this piece about about being vulnerable and open, and to be able to go to a place of true meaning in relationships. So I think you're certainly on the right track, and we see this. So if you go back to some innovation thinking, and you look at the history of innovation and the different orders. So 100 years or so ago, the main focus of design, of innovation and design, was on the visual. We go back to square one of human nature, and you go all the way back to the caveman. To this day, I still believe it's been, that brand has been mismanaged. I think it may be Cave Woman. Asked for directions how to get to a cave to secure shelter for a family, for a tribe. Anyway, so, right. So we begin with that idea and a lot of attention on graphics and those pieces, and then look and feel product design. And so we evolved through the Industrial Revolution and design of product and the look and feel and everything that went into that. And then we arrived at this third order of design, which is around interaction. And we start thinking about customer experience and what motivates, and emotional selling, and all those different aspects of it that showed up. And then eventually, we're to system design. And that's pretty much where we've been now for a while, which is about design of organizations, processes, systems. You can even apply it to government, and you look at it through that lens. And quite naturally, if you look at the arc of all of that, and what I would suggest to you here is, now here's this fifth order, which is awareness design, where we've come through, as a society, we've come through all the different errors or stages that we've been through, from agriculture, knowledge and information technology. And now I think we have arrived, and we've already been there for a while, is this whole idea of designing through this lens of awareness. And it's always been there. The thing is, now it's coming to the forefront. And this has to do with our awareness of who we are as human beings, and what motivates us, and what we need most. And that we innovate and solve problems through that lens. And I think what you're talking about here, and what the pandemic does, it puts it right in front of us. It's right here, that unless we're aware of who we are as a human race, and what we're capable of, and also what our fears and our concerns are, unless we're able to have those conversations, it's really difficult for us to create the solutions and innovate the solutions that we need right now. Now, certainly, science and pursuit of a vaccine, and being able to use physical distancing and all these different approaches to try and manage it. These are all solutions. Take a look at what's going on, is that we all have to be able to engage in a way that we're aware of what it is that we contribute to it, and what our role in it is as individuals and communities. And without an awareness of our behavior and the origin and our fears, and having to have those conversations, the really, really big problems and we're just adding to the list of wicked problems that we have in the world. And or it's putting spotlight on them without using awareness as the context for solving these problems. We're in a way, we're going to perhaps, this is a moment where we have to question whether or not we have one of the greatest opportunities we're living in right now. This moment of opportunity, if we're able to use this and use it well, we can really manifest some really wonderful creative innovations and ways of moving forward, as opposed to trying to be rigid and hang on. And in a way, if we're too rigid and we don't innovate enough and we're not aware enough, what we're going to wind up doing is actually being coming out of this in the same place we started. And I would think at a personal level, for me, that would be a real shame.
Yeah, I would, I would be a real shame too, because many people maybe were like myself and just tried to learn as much during this pause, whether that be about the world, about themselves, about their skill
Yeah.
set. Um, some people felt pressure from it. I definitely enjoyed it, but I expect that we take this every opportunity. Even the worst advice I ever got was something that taught me something I didn't know. So I think it's definitely a stepping stone forward. And whether that be more awareness, as you mentioned, about each other and our interactions, or more awareness about the environment we live in and how nature can affect us as much as we can affect nature. Um, and we move from human-centered design to including environmental design and everything, and weighing the difference between the value of creating this product versus the damage it might do. I definitely think as we look to the amount of masks we've used and thrown away, it's funny that like as we pause on all the factories and the skies get clear, we load up the landfills with a lot of plastic in our masks and all that. It's going to be interesting to see how people deal with that, because I know many people are already focused on the environment, and now we're creating a new form of trash while we do away with the old form of trash temporarily. And when all those things will balance out. I was reading an article and it basically said that Darwin got it wrong. It wasn't about survival of the fittest, and society was based on the concept that in everything it's about survival of the fittest. And this article was claiming that it was really about a balance. It's not about the fittest, it's about the best fit. So whatever the environment needs, that will survive, not the best, strongest, fastest will survive. And I think that's an interesting concept. What was society built, our Western society built on the wrong concept that competition is what should thrive all of us, when really the fit of how something new will affect everything else should that drive us. It was a really interesting article that I uncovered.
Yeah. Um, mm, Once again, the journalist in you shows up again. Yeah, I'm thinking about that because you can unpack that in a couple of different ways. I think one of the things that's true is, so if I were to kind of differentiate, is it good or bad, and is it true or not? Let's go to a place of what we do know, and
Right.
this is the practical side of this, and that says that we all have a longing for community, and we all have a longing for caring and looking out for each other. I mean, that's what we do in that caring piece. Again, as I mentioned, that's big. But there's
Mm-hmm.
also in all of us this desire to compete. It's innate in us, else we wouldn't have created our society, and wouldn't have evolved the way it is. I'm not sure if it's always going to be the Darwinian, the strongest always survive. Strength can be defined in different ways. You
Mm-hmm.
can call being clever a strength. You can avoidance of pain can be a strength. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. One thing is certain is that we all live in this construct that's innate in us to want to create hierarchy in some forms, which means that we compete with one another. And that's insatiable appetite for knowledge and learning and expressing our competencies and our expertise, our know-how, our capabilities. That's natural to us. Now, with that being said, I think you come at it through the lens of how aware are we of how we use it, and that effect, and what kind of effect can we have on Mother Nature, and are there aspects of it we can control? Maybe at the end of the day, and I think this might have a sense of reasoning behind it that gives us a little bit of an anchor, is that at the end of the day, our effect on nature is our choice. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, we really can't affect the nature. What we can do is, of course, is we can impact it, and we impact it through the choices we make. And again, we're back to awareness: is how aware of the choices that we're making. I think you pose a really great question. What do we do in the short-term, long-term consequences
Yeah.
of of safety masks and of, of all the supplies that we currently need to get through the pandemic. And we rely on what we already know. And then the next question is, can we innovate moving forward in a way from what we're learning right now, so that in the future we have different forms of response, we have different innovations, we have different tools, we have different approaches to doing it that come from a place of a deeper and greater sense of awareness of our impact. We're not going to, and it really is interesting too, because very often if there's a tornado or a hurricane or something, it's always, we're gonna battle Mother Nature and we're gonna win. All right, sure you are. Okay, yeah, no, you can make some choices and you can innovate to protect yourself and keep yourself safe. You're not going to eradicate what's coming your way. Now, have we impacted weather patterns? Have we impacted global warming through our choices that we've made as human beings? All the science and data tells us that that's true. Nevertheless, what do we do with it? And what do we know now? And how do we move forward? And again, I'm going to suggest to you that right now we're in a place of incredible opportunity to take a close look at who we are, how we're behaving, and the choices that we're making, and what is in the betterment of our society, and what is in the betterment of the individual and collectively, as well as what's best for our planet.
Yeah, I think we're at a breaking point in different ways. Like, consumers want something that's so trendy and today, and then at the same time they want it to be environmentally responsible, and they want to have both at the same time. And maybe during this pause, either you're 100% addicted to Amazon and getting everything you could ever imagine, just clicking all the time and buying, or maybe you're pausing from that and thinking, I have a closet full of clothes and I've worn one outfit all week because I haven't left the house. So it's almost this breaking point that we're at, where people are going to have to I don't want people to pick a side, but people are going to have to logically understand that you can't have everything and expect the thing to not affect something else. Like, you can't have it all and expect no negative connotation from trying to grab everything. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's going to happen right now or a year from now, but it's going to be interesting to see how people deal with this irresponsibility that they're currently practicing in child management. I know with plastic masks is a good example. I saw an older gentleman from Spain, who took a 1 liter plastic Coke bottle and with a pair of scissors cut off the top, cut off the bottom at an angle, and made a perfect plastic guard for his face. I saw that and thought, that is innovation. That is incredible. Did I see any other company try and run with that concept and help provide masks that way? No, everybody was using their 3D printer to code a new type of mask that looked futuristic and print and make as many as they could, when they had an alternative right there that was super simple to make, recycling, and very practical. So I don't know if people will always pick practicality over the new hot thing. And
interesting. I think it's a great, you're right. And how can we repurpose? One of the things that happens when we become environmentally more conscious and more conscious of the clutter and if I may, quote unquote, the crap in our lives.
Yeah.
One of the things we can do is take a step back and say, what can I do with this? Yeah, my wife is, she's taking T-shirts, and I look through my T-shirts, which ones don't I wear often, and let's cut them up and let's make some masks. And we've generated a lot of masks.
Wow.
I have a lot of brand T-shirts that I've collected and been given through the years. And so for those of you that might be listening or watching, my apologies. and for destroying your advertising. The thing about it is that there's a lot of different ways we can do this. And again, it comes back to this idea of what's our level of awareness around the choices that we're making. And how do we want to see ourselves in that? There's something else too in what you said that I think is really important, is this idea of how we integrate. That we so often we look at this way or that way, and the choices of or buts in the middle. And I think it's also important to see how we can look at and see the possibility of and is the language of innovation, of creativity. And is the building one idea and that's how we innovate. That's how we solve problems at the best potential. We keep going with the ands and we keep building on our solutions and making them better. And I think it's important to be able to recognize and what you're saying as well is that we've got these two what look to be polarized ways of seeing something, and a choice of the but or the or in the middle. When we start thinking about how do we bring that together, when you were reflecting on the Coke bottle, the soda bottle mask, my mind immediately went to Nike and the great innovation of Nike, repurposing plastics to make jerseys, make kits for soccer and for football, and to do that. And so is now an opportunity to take that same kind of technology and do something with it. Maybe it's already being done and I don't know about it. That's possible. So you say to yourself, okay, there's a technology already there. And what do we do with it? And we've got a new problem. And we keep moving in that direction with curiosity. That whole key of that curiosity is the spoon that stirs innovation.
There it is. I think what you're saying is that if you use but, you look like an ass, right? Is that it's on that path?
Yeah, the other one is your butt out of my face. I appreciate the word just because it's right in the middle of rebuttal. And if I'm looking at creating rebuttalism, and this goes back to where we started with listening, if I'm listening through the lens of rebuttal and what's my comeback as opposed to building on what's being said, there it is. So I think one of the more powerful things that we do is we think in our own minds and language. Just keep that at the forefront of our thinking. And what else is possible? And you said this, and what else do you want to tell me? And what else would you like me to know? These are all really, really just simple, positive ways of thinking and being aware of the possibilities.
I tried to research that. That reminds me, because I have the problem saying, but Edgar points it out to me frequently. And I've tried to do it less for sure. It's just something that I use as if it were an and. I don't know who taught me how to speak English, but they didn't do a great job, I guess. See, there's a but. Here's what I was going to say. I did research into how to build habits. And because I'm very much based on, with my obsessive personalities that I got going on, ways to help myself. All of them.
All of my friends, they're all right
here. Yeah, all my friends right here. Ways that I could help prevent myself from negative thought, whether that be like not saying but, or putting a rubber band on my wrist, and every time I say something I shouldn't, giving it a little pull, associating a little pain with it. Or other examples like when I see that I'm having a problem, I talk myself through it out loud, using my name as a third person. So I distance myself from the problem, and then I kind of make fun of it because I'm talking about it out loud. And most of the time it's like a stress that I'm feeling. And when I say it out loud, it makes me realize how dumb it is. So I talk myself out of the problem. I'm like, no one's going to think that you're a maniac for wearing shoes with no socks. I mean, some people might, but I talk myself out of these problems by distancing myself from them. And those they're not habits, but they're tools for helping myself improve my self-talk, especially right now when burnout is definitely happening across every industry. People are tired of sitting at home, tired of looking at the computer, tired of never having anything different happen to them, or just missing their friends. That amount of self-talk is so important. Do you do anything to improve your self-talk, or how did you get to where you were always using ands and you left the buts behind?
Listening. I still use but every now and then, and when I do, it's kind of it smacks. It smacks me. I just go, wait, that I just said that, and I'm very conscious of it. So it is consciousness choice. For us to break any habit or move and create a new habit, a healthy one, whatever it is, it always comes back to the consciousness of choice of what I do and say. Again, I'm a big believer that the power of choice is the most powerful thing that we have in our lives. The choice of what I do and say in any given moment. And I think to manifest that, you've got to be aware of your behavior as it is, and then make a conscious effort to change the behavior. And the same, I believe, works with self-talk. That's my own personal experience of it. Listening to my own thoughts and learning to manage that is key, because once you're able to be aware of your thoughts, because you think right before you act at some level. Somebody says, "Whoa, I did that without thinking." Well, not actually true. So the idea being that if I'm aware of this, and that also then, once I become aware of the thought, I become aware of the emotion. And when I become aware of the emotion and I have that emotional intelligence towards my behavior, then I can begin to look deeper and go into my self-concept and say, okay, what's that about? And where's the manifestation of the thought, the emotion, the behavior? And so it really is a matter of unpacking that. And I think frameworks work well. Just like saying, but it's might want to ask myself why I always use that. Maybe it's just conditioning, and that's the language that I use. And I'm not thinking a lot about that. And then I become conscious that I use it. Then I change the behavior. Maybe it's a piece of myself wanting to be argumentative or push back or not accept what I'm hearing or not wanting to listen. There's probably I would think we could make quite a list beyond my experience and my expertise. Make a list of why people use the word "but" in different situations in the way that they do. In the end, that's just another form of wanting to make a decision to behave differently, to manage our thoughts differently, to come at it differently. That's what makes us unique as human beings in our reasoning capability. If we have sound mind and we're able to, and there's not a barrier to it by way of an illness or dementia or something as long as we're able to reason, we are remarkably, remarkably powerful. Here's the thing. We know that we're able to reason. We don't always reason. That's the catch-22. And then I come up with a reason for not reasoning. See how that works?
I'm pretty good at that.
I too.
Look, even on the wall, here's an example of how hard it has been for me to change. This is "don't say okay." When I came back to America, I was working with Edgar, and I didn't realize I had the pattern of saying okay almost after every sentence, and that was for in Spanish confirming that everyone in the room was on the same page. But in English, it doesn't make sense. It just sounds like I'm saying okay every 2 seconds.
Right, when no means yes and yes means no, depending on where you are, the culture. Yeah, that's an interesting thing too. Yeah, just as a side note of what's also happening now in the pandemic is cultural awareness is starting to percolate in ways we haven't seen it percolate before. What are people doing in other countries to manage the pandemic? What are we doing here in this country to actually explore and be empathetic to the different ways that people manage emergency, they manage grieving, fear, all the anxiety that comes with it. There's cultural perspectives that I think we owe ourselves to also understanding and to be open to empathize. We know in innovation that multicultural innovation is the source of some of the best innovation that we experience, because we have so many different views and so many different ideas coming together as we manage those. And I think that's a great reminder of how important it is right now that we open ourselves to better empathizing and understanding one another, including through a multicultural lens, and understanding the different diversities of thinking and experiences that people are having. Right now, it's really, really powerful to see how it is that we're kind of slicing and dicing as opposed to seeing it more from a community and integrative way.
Yeah, it's so easy to reach out. Everyone's in the same place. Everybody's online. So if you're looking to get that multicultural taste and get some perspective about how other people are doing it, you could join a webinar in 2 seconds. Everyone is having webinars. I I had a webinar, and there was a girl from let's see if I can name these right, Portugal, who was living in Switzerland, a girl from Paris, a girl from Louisiana, and then someone from California that was living in Austin. And that was, you know, just a few people that were there were all from all over the world, and we got to share the problems that we were going through. And problems are human. I thought about it before, and I thought innovation right now seems like it's very digital, right? Or the world is digital, but innovation, it's always human. Innovation is always driven by this human need. And
Yeah.
it was interesting to see the dichotomy, the difference between, okay, we all are all online, but everything that drives it is us and our needs. So we can't lose track of that. Technology isn't always the solution. It may be the means, but we always want that interaction and that focus on, well, I guess we're selfish on us.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, it lends itself to where we started, which is that we're in this
Mm-hmm.
age of awareness right now, where everything that we've created as human beings, we delve further, and further into understanding what drives us and why we're doing the things that we're doing. What are the emotional drivers behind it? And as we explore that, and as we deepen our relationship to awareness, that the potential that that represents. And again, I'm going to suggest it's always been there. We just
Mm-hmm.
we're if there's a place of, I think, of human evolution, in reasoning and science, in understanding um, our capacities, human beings, it will always come back to how aware are we, and of our own motivations, our own desires, who we are as human beings, individually, collectively. And that's, at the end of the day, that will be where we need to go to solve the biggest problems that we have, the wicked problems, and to be able to satisfy moments like this, where we have to be able to respond and do better than we have done.
Yeah. Well, awareness, I don't know if I'm going to try and see if this makes sense, but awareness, the history of it, how the arc of its growth and where it came from, in my mind, it's related to that our needs have been met in the very animal side of things. So we have food now, we have shelter, we have these basic things. So then we've changed our focus from being out and about to, okay, now I'm looking at you and I want to understand you, because that's the important thing that keeps me alive, because that social interaction is the only thing I really need to focus on. And so we've skipped a part of the world, obviously not all of it, has jumped from focusing on that gathering and protecting myself to interacting with other humans for the social aspect. And
Yeah,
that's where maybe awareness has started to scale up.
yeah. I think that's a great, that's worth exploring further. It's probably a whole nother conversation.
Oops.
What you did head on is something that's that is a part of our human experience, is that we have a tendency that when we jump too far ahead, something's going to remind us that we're actually back here somewhere. It's true. Yeah, we got smacked down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens to us. We make these wonderful leaps in technology, and we come up with these great ideas and great solutions to problems, and then we extend ourselves to a place, and then all of a sudden we realize that we're going to have to come back here and figure out what just happened and how we can use it. Else we abuse it. If you don't use it well, then we wind up using it in ways that are dysfunctional, don't serve us well. And when that happens, that's the reminder that we seem to have skipped a step here. And the step comes back to an awareness of why we're doing this in the first place. What is our true intention, and what is it that we want to bring to the world? And there's always going to be, and this is part of human nature, there's always going to be some abuse that takes place, because it seems that's part of the desire of human beings as well, else we wouldn't have the abuse of nature and history that we have. It's always got, and again, that requires for us to come over any kind of much like overcoming an addiction. Socially, we have large addictions, and the only way to overcome those is becoming aware of what the addiction is, the origin of the addiction, and the power that we can choose to alter the course, to go in a different direction. Again, we're back at awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've come full circle multiple times throughout the conversation about the importance of awareness, not only of yourself, of others, of how your business interacts with your consumers, but on so many levels. But it all came down to the basic of, if I can know me, then I can actively listen to know others. And I mean, if you want to add any final thoughts, I know we're getting close to an hour. Ready, flying by. You're just so charming.
There's moments of appreciation that we need to go grab a hold of when they arise. And I just want to express to you that in the last couple of years that I've got to know you, John, I'm very grateful. You're a lot of fun. I love my conversations with you. And so thank you very much. And what I'd like to do is offer this simple idea, and that is, if there's something you'd like us to address, or questions that you have, and it could be anything on the possibilities of design and innovation, and in whatever context it is, and for whatever reason that you'd like to ask and pose a question or share an idea that you'd like to talk about as part of this series of podcasts, please let us know.
Mm-hmm.
There's the simplest way I'm going to suggest is just send us an email, and you can just email me directly at edgar@edgarpapke.com, and any and all emails we'll both respond to, whether it's here in the podcast, or we'll get back to you as quickly as we can with any questions, thoughts, comments. Anything that you have is absolutely welcome to be part of this conversation. Again, the intention here is that we create a conversation that's useful.
Yeah, and I hope we provided a useful conversation. I think we'll wrap up there. I will say I had one example that I thought was funny of a business pivoting. A swimsuit company in France pivoted to become a grocery delivery company. Very unexpected, right? That is a supreme plot twist. They figured out that they were experts in supply chain management, basically. And so what they do is they've signed on with a bunch of local restaurants and distribute their goods. And they use their platform, which is a website literally for swimsuits, that now, instead of just swimsuits, has bagels, drinks, all of that on there. So it's an interesting time. You can help people out in unexpected ways when you figure out what your capabilities are. And Edgar always helps me. Thank you. As you mentioned,
Thank you, John.
Thank you for helping me uncover my skill set and improve my knowledge. So hopefully all of you listeners are doing the same from all the knowledge nuggets, and we'll be back soon. So we're going to sign off. So thanks, Edgar.
Great. See you all next time. Thanks, and take good care of yourself and each other. Thank you.
Ciao.